On this episode of The Security Return.
There's only one internet, so when nation states are attacking nation states, there's tons of opportunity for collateral damage.
Every single sector has been hit, regardless of your revenue, regardless of your size. If you have data, you are a target for these threat actors.
"2025 showed us that cyber risk isn't theoretical anymore, and every sector got hit, and the playbook keeps evolving. If you're a business leader or a CISO, you need to know how to strengthen your defenses for 2026. Hi, I'm Gerald Auger from Kairos Sec alongside Tyler Ramsbey. This is the Security Return, and we are going to be teaching you in this episode how you can learn from history to protect yourself from repeating it in the future. Tyler, it's great to have you here, as always, having these conversations. So let's talk about 2025. What are some of the recurring weaknesses in major breaches that you were seeing that may even have formed the work that you were doing?
Yeah, it's a great question. And there's an author who said this. Someone's going to get this in the comment section, and it's some famous person, but they said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. Do you know who that is, Jerry?
I have never heard that, but I do like it,
Oh,
and we'll
it's so
start
good.
using it. I'll attribute it to you, though. Yeah.
I'll take it. I'll take it. Some author said that, and it's always stuck with me. And we see that in every aspect, including cybersecurity. So when we look at 2025, to highlight what you just said, every single sector has been hit. And honestly, what's been really concerning for me is you see major healthcare systems. It's always one thing when a large business gets hit, that sucks. But when you're hitting healthcare systems and even schools, we saw some of that in 2025 as well. It just shows that regardless of your revenue, regardless of your size, if you have data, you are a target for these threat actors. So, happen in 2025, it may not repeat itself exactly, but I guarantee you it is going to rhyme in 2026.
Absolutely. And I know, just based on the research that I did and just working in the industry, a couple key areas that I saw, ransomware, we're in like year 8 of just ransomware being the number one threat, to worry about and secure against. So I don't think a business leader should be thinking that, we're good here on ransomware because we've done it enough and it's old and played out. It continues to be a prolific cyber attack. And then also, as there is uptick in geopolitical natures in the world that we live in, there has been a massive uptick in nation state activity. And honestly, there's only one internet. So when nation states are attacking nation states, there's tons of opportunity for collateral damage or even having, a business. Maybe you're listening to this and you are a federal contractor working with the US government. You are a much more desirable target than the government themselves because it's easy to kind of ricochet off you and pivot in there. So there has just been a massive uptick in all of these opportunities for you to get compromised, frankly, and it's not good. But let's go beyond the headlines, though, because these are the surface level things that maybe someone listening had read in the newspaper or watched on a news brief. What are these kind of breaches really telling us, Tyler? When you're talking to our clients of Kairos Sec, what are some of the things that this current threat intelligence is informing you to be able to educate them better?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to what we call in the pen testing industry an assume breach scenario. So, with a lot of companies, especially if they haven't done a pen test before or it's been a while, they really focus on their external perimeter, which is good. Obviously, if your external perimeter has vulnerabilities in it, there's bots scanning the internet all day. They're going to find that they're going to exploit it. But the reality is, when you look at these breaches, it's almost always from the inside. Sometimes it's an employee who has been bribed or even blackmailed. We've seen some of that. Sometimes it's remote employees when jobs are outsourced and we see bribery there and people get initial access. So when it comes to pen testing, I think an area to really focus on in 2026 is yes, focus on the external perimeter, but beyond that, it's not if, but unfortunately, it's when it happens. When you have an employee get breached, when someone has access to your company's VPN, what damage can they do? Let's figure that out in a pen test, and then we can have some steps on how can we remediate this and kind of minimize that blast radius. I think that's the biggest shift that we need to focus on is not if, but it's when. And let's see if we can figure out what that looks like practically and take some of those extra defense in-depth steps.
I hear people regularly say, and it's not incorrect, but it is not, it is a bit misleading. oh, hey, I'm a mid-sized manufacturing company, 750 million annual revenue. We have security controls, we have MFA, we're pretty good here. But then if you look back at 2025, Change Healthcare, a massive healthcare entity, suffered one of the biggest ransomware attacks of the year. We saw Jaguar get hit. Everybody knows Jaguar, international company. So yes, even Snowflake, one of these companies that holds data and really serves in a B2B capacity, these companies have infinitely larger budget than many of us and many of the people listening right now. And they definitely had invested in security, yet they somehow suffered these massive breaches. So, what is it, Tyler? Like, demystify. Like, what is it about these companies? Like, why is money not the answer for managing risk or preventing these type of attacks from happening?
It would be nice if, like, the more money you could had, you just throw money at a problem and it magically fixes it. But this is the real world. And the reality is, those large organizations in particular, I've done pen tests on some of those size of organizations. And yes, they're large. Yes, they have a lot of money. But the larger your organization, the larger your attack surface. You would be surprised at some of the crazy things I've seen on very large organizations that, like in a pen test, for example, we call it an early disclosure. If you find something that's critical nature across the board, you report it to the client same day so they can patch it. I'd find critical disclosures regularly on large organizations with large security budgets. So one big thing is you have a much larger attack surface. You have more money, but you also have more infrastructure and humans are involved. I know we're kind of pivoting to AI, but even when you look at AI isn't perfect. We've seen that. We pen test AI agents as well. They are not doing a great job, but humans by nature, we make errors, we make mistakes. And a threat actor, especially when we talk about a nation state actor who has legit skills and resources behind them, they're hunting for those flaws. You may have made a misconfiguration and thought, hey, no one's going to see this. They're going to see it. They're going to hunt for it. They're going to find it. We find it when we do a pen test. I guarantee a threat actor is going to find it as well. And all it takes is one thing that they can pull on, and then everything begins unraveling from there.
Yeah, I mean, and that's absolutely like the number one base value of pen testing is basically having a friend find the problems before a financially motivated criminal or a nation state threat actor. So let's do some service to the individual listening to this podcast right now. So individual listening, we want to hook you up. Let's look at 2026 and how we can help them strengthen the defenses, right? So what are some things, Tyler, that are maybe low hanging fruit or something that will have high value for putting in the effort that someone listening could do either in their organization, bring it to their CISO, that would reduce risk or at least help them manage better in the event of a potential cyber attack?
Yes, I feel like I've been harping on this for a long time. All of us have. MFA seems easy. It is so incredibly powerful if you have MFA configured. Now, you can bypass MFA. We can even talk about some ways threat actors do that, but that might be a little too technical for a lot of people. You can bypass MFA, but the reality is if MFA is in place, you're going to stop most of the attacks that come your way. A lot of the threat actors, criminals out there, they're not sophisticated hackers. You put something like MFA in their way, and they're just going to go to the next target. So if you do not have MFA across the board, you need to implement that. And I want to highlight across the board. When I'm doing a pen test for an organization, I've noticed that they have kind of what I would call MFA patchwork. They have some services that have MFA enabled, other services that don't have MFA enabled. And as a threat actor or even a pen tester, what I'm doing is looking for those services that do not have MFA enabled. And I'm using that as a pivot point to get into the environment. So make sure MFA is enabled across the board. I also recognize easier said than done. I used to manage IT for a college. And so a college doesn't have a lot of money and you have a lot of pushback on any change that you make. So I understand MFA is not an easy thing to push out. I will say I think that's where pen testing is also powerful. That when you have people are like, hey, this is not important, that's not worth the time. You do a pen test, that person gets phished, I get access to their account, or a pen tester gets access to their account. All of a sudden, that MFA issue goes from being theoretical to personal. So if I could give one thing across the board, MFA, not just on key services, but on everything across the board, especially outside perimeter, but anything with internal access as well. VP or not VPN, MFA, MFA, MFA. You're going to get a lot with just the MFA piece.
Yep, and that's multi-factor authentication, commonly referred to as MFA. And this would be like a six-digit rotating number, a text message that comes in, maybe an email you have to click on. It can come in many different forms and factors, but essentially it's an additional layer after you type in your username and password. And passwords are notoriously weak, reused, and easy to brute force or guess, or even sometimes default. Now, for me listening, if you've already implemented MFA or you got it on your little list here now that you're taking notes from the podcast, another one that I really want to highlight, and this is something that pen testers often do, but they do it because it's mad valuable, is knowing what your actual attack surface is. Now, let me take a step
Mm,
back and explain this. You are at an organization for sure, right? And you've got internal assets and then you have internet facing assets. Sometimes it's like your website, which makes sense, but sometimes it's like your VPN or your Citrix gateway, allowing remote workforce to be able to get into your environment to do the things they need to do. Also, we have cloud, right? Maybe you're an M365 subscriber and you log into OneDrive or Outlook to check your email, those type of things. Whatever those are, you need to be aware of what they are in their entirety, because as Tyler just mentioned, if you are unaware of some internet facing asset over here, like unaware of it, then maybe you wouldn't even have thought to put MFA on it because it's not even on your scope or on your like spreadsheet, right? So know your true attack surface. And also, and
mm.
unfortunately, this is work, right? It's not a static thing, right? Someone can come in and plug something in. Someone can come in and change the configuration from a private server to a public facing server very easily in Azure. So you have to constantly be looking in your attack surface, which is why we have, automated tools that you can get, even very affordable ones, frankly, or you have, vulnerability scanners or even Shodan monitor, to name one that's pretty good. But at the end of the day, all you're trying to do is see the same thing that these cyber criminals and these nation state threat actors can see. Because if you can see it and they can see it, then you can have visibility to understand what they could possibly do. So that's a huge opportunity that I would strongly encourage you to take a look at.
Yeah, that's spot on. I mean, I don't know how many times on a pen test where I ask the client, "Hey, what IPs are in scope for like an external pen test?" And the answer is, "I don't know. I think these ones, but we don't know for sure." And that's already a red flag. If you can't scope out a pen test, you don't know what assets are there. That has to happen before a pen test is even worth it. But that is huge. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, let me ask you this, Tyler. Is that a kind of an output or an element of a pen test? When a client says something like that, I mean, are you able to scan the entire IP range that they have to find all the assets that they might have and then report on that?
So it depends on the assessment type. Without getting into too much detail, on an external pen test where the internet is technically the attack surface, we have to be very careful. We don't want to hit somebody else's IP and potentially break the law because you don't own their assets. So for an external pen test, we're not able to do much of that. But for an internal pen test, that's where a lot of value comes into. When we're in your internal network and we know your IP ranges, you would be surprised how much more we know about your infrastructure than maybe you even know about your infrastructure. I've had it where I find a critical finding on something and the client's like, "Wait, what is that? I don't think it's in our environment." I'm like, "No, it's right here. It's definitely in your environment." So that has happened many, many, many times.
All right, it's that time of the show where we do the lightning round. Now, this is a really fun segment that we do in every episode of the security return. I'm going to set a clock to 20 seconds and ask Tyler a question that he does not know already. So he'll be hearing it for the first time. We'll give him 20 seconds to give a coherent answer. The stress is on. Are you ready, Tyler?
Let's do it. I'll give it my best shot.
Okay, here we go. Let's get this up first. Oh, 1 second. Okay. And let me get the timer up. All right. Are you ready, Tyler?
Let's do it.
Okay, first one. What's one breach trend you hope disappears in 2026?
Yes, if I hear about another large organization getting compromised because they did not have MFA on a public facing login portal, I will lose my mind. So I'm hoping that disappears fully in 2026.
All right, look at that. He nailed it, everybody. So didn't run out of time on that one. Okay. All right, Tyler, what's one thing companies consistently overlook?
This might be a newer trend, but I want to talk about it, and that is the danger of outsourcing. We see a lot of IT jobs being outsourced to other areas, and I think if you don't analyze the attack vector of outsourcing and what can happen, it can be bad for your organization. I have a lot more we could say, but I got 2 seconds.
All right. Good job keeping it in there. All right, next one. Tyler, what's one vulnerability you wish you could eliminate forever?
It would be SQL injection. I've been thinking about SQL injection recently. That's like a classic vulnerability, but you would be surprised how often we still discover SQL injection, even in public facing web apps. You can dump databases, dump password hashes, or clear text passwords. It's a bad day when that exists in your environment. I had to
All
talk
right.
fast on that one. I
I
like
did
really quick talking.
I did want to get the timer in at least once and kind of catch you. All right. Next one. Here we go. Tyler, what's the worst bad habit that companies carried into 2026?
Mm. I would say when people in the C-suite get special exceptions to the security policy. I used to work in IT support back in the day. That was a common thing then. It's a common thing now. You are in the C-suite. You're a target. You are not an exception. If anything, you should have more security on your accounts.
All right. I love it. I've also started, for those listening on audio only, I have started the timer before I read the question now, just to put the heat a little higher on Tyler. All right.
I'll take
Final
it.
one of the lightning round, Tyler. What's one thing companies under us? What's one thing cut? Oh my God.
You got to start that timer over.
Yeah. All right. Final one, Tyler. What's one thing companies underestimate about attackers?
Mm. They underestimate how curious some attackers can be. A lot of attackers are just script kiddies, which means they fire off scripts, but other ones really are sophisticated. Those are the nation state actors. They have money, tools at their disposal. Do not underestimate what they are able to do.
All right. Don't underestimate those nation state threat actors. I'd also say, on top of that, hold on one second. I would also say, on top of that, not just don't underestimate them, but remember, nation state threat actors, they are at work. They've been given a mission, take over this. A cyber criminal, they find a locked door. They just go to the house next door and try to break in, see if that door is unlocked. Nation state, they're going to keep pounding on your door until they figure out how to get in, because that's the mission, right? So you got to be mindful of that from a threat modeling perspective. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Security Return. Tyler, what's going on with Kairos Sec?
Yeah, so with Kairos Sec, we are actively booking into 2026 now that it's the new year. So if your company is looking for a pen test this year, reach out. We do everything from web apps and networks to cloud to social engineering. So whatever you're looking for, we'd love to have a conversation. If we're not even a good fit, I have a lot of friends in the industry can give you some good recommendations. But do not skip pen testing this year. You will find it incredibly helpful.
I love it. So go into the description below. There will be a link directly to Kairos Sec so you can get a hold of me or Tyler. This has been the Security Return. I hope you're getting value. If you are, definitely share it with your friends, trying to get the word out there. Until next time, stay secure.